In 2014, BBC Three presented a televised debate which asked the question, can you be gay and Muslim? One side points out to the fact that there are verses in the Quran, the holy book of the Muslim religion, which explicitly forbid sexual acts between the same sex, arguing that sexuality is only permissible between men and women, husband and wife. The other side points out that there are a variety of interpretations on the matter. There are various sects within Islam. Scholars disagree, and it's not up to individuals to judge the actions or intentions of others. That love is love, and that nobody should speak on behalf of God. The other side responds with, well, if that's indeed the case, then surely we should legitimize terrorist groups who have their own interpretation of the Quran because, well, they just have a different interpretation. You therefore need to have a stable source of interpretation, a mainstream understanding of things, all of which make you a Muslim, regardless of context. If you are sick, you'd go to the doctor to get your medication. If you reject their diagnosis, then you need to have an equal level of medical knowledge to contest them. Otherwise, anyone could interpret anything any way they wanted. The other side then say that the claim to stable interpretation is ahistorical. Ideas change depending on their context, and a literalist interpretation of the Quran is an offense to the adaptable and ever-relevant ideas expressed in the religion. We'll come back to these arguments in a minute, but for now I want you to forget the question. Look at the way in which the debate itself is constructed. Like many of the debates presented on the BBC, the platform itself is portrayed as being completely neutral. This is the genius of political technologies. On the one hand, there's a somewhat traditionalist, orthodox perspective, enforcing a message that is antagonistic to liberal sensibilities. On the other hand, you have the progressive Muslims who call such traditionalism backwards. The BBC showcases how post 9/11 7/7 Britain is willing to inhabit within itself the tensions between the good immigrant and those who have not yet fully integrated into so-called British liberal values. The ability of power to consume makes spectacle of a binary conflict and benevolently open the opportunity for reconciliation, all the while maintaining its hegemonic role of a neutral platform provider.
Why are you focusing on the issue of the platform? I thought we were here to discuss who speaks for Islam.
Before I get into the various theories on how it is that scholars have attempted to answer that question, I'd like us to pay attention to the various discourses surrounding the issue and how it is that different groups with different interests push a particular narrative. For example, a message pushed by pro-Israel conservatives in the past couple of months has been, how is it possible that all these leftists who care about Palestine are totally comfortable with the fact that gay Arabs are persecuted in the Islamic religion? Now, do you for a second think that pro-Israel conservatives really care about gay Arabs?
No, it's just political point scoring.
Right. But in this political point scoring, there's always an assertion of what Islam is. An unchanging idea that is antithetical to the values portrayed by the audience that is viewing the message. Over time, any political action that brings about violence against these individuals is then justified. In the same way Republicans in 2002-2003, who are normally hostile to any kind of feminist thought, were all of a sudden concerned about Iraqi women and the oppressive standards that were imposed on them. When Sam Harris on the Bill Maher show says,
But Islam at this moment is the motherlode of bad ideas.
and then follows this up by saying,
But they also keep women and homosexuals immiserated in these cultures, and we have to empower the true reformers in the Muslim world to change it.
both the BBC and American liberal media argue for who should speak for Islam. This should is in line with liberal values and often holds itself within the rarefied vacuum of philosophical discourse, void of any political or socio-economic context. The various books on history, sexuality, gender, economics, trade, politics that are constantly being published with reference to Islamic history all aim to distort this monolithic image that supports the mission of modern-day Western missionaries enlightening the savages. In order to do this, Islam needs to be fossilized as a static idea that needs reform from both within and from without. That the West needs to empower the reformers. These so-called reformers are, more often than not, government-funded, parrot neoconservative lines on anti-extremist measures, and, unlike real grassroots movements, have absolutely zero credibility in Muslim communities.
It's like when you mix a hippo and a critter.
What?
You get a hypocrite.
Ernest Gellner, a British Czech philosopher and social anthropologist, put forth the idea that Islam is a means by which society is ordered. Since the religion is scriptural, it lays down permanent laws and principles on how to organize society. And given that the scripture is complete, Muslim society is one where the state and religion are merged as one. Sociological order is given through scholar politicians that interpret the text and bring about cohesion and solidarity. And it is they who speak for Islam. Scholars such as Gilsenan and Abdul Hamid El-Zein, however, took a different approach. They said that it's impossible to look at Islam, or even its interpretations, without a holistic approach, which includes the social, economic, and political factors. There is no such thing as one monolithic Islam. And they argued that scholars such as Gellner essentialized Islam into their respective systems of sociological and symbolic study. For El-Zein, Islam was only relevant in the very specific context that it emerged. How Islam is articulated in Morocco, for example, is different to the Islam in Indonesia. There are and always have been different Islams. Talal Asad, however, took serious issue with this perspective, claiming that orthodoxy is crucial to all Islamic traditions. It is not a mere body of opinion, but a distinctive relationship, a relationship of power. Wherever Muslims have the power to regulate, uphold, require, or adjust correct practices, and to condemn, exclude, undermine, or replace incorrect ones, there is the domain of orthodoxy. Argument and conflict over the form and significance of practices are therefore a natural part of any Islamic tradition. He claims that Islam is a discursive tradition which is ultimately based on reference to the Quran and Hadith. The Hadith is the biographical account of the Prophet, and suggests that Muslims defer to the holy text of Islam and place them above all other forms of ontological reference.
But on the other hand,
many scholars who conducted studies into Islam and how Muslims live their lives demonstrate that Muslims are constantly negotiating different moral registers and different identities. Think about a Muslim woman who has just entered an interview situation. This woman needs to get a job in order to provide for her family. However, she adheres to the Islamic law that any contact between men and women who are not married or related is considered a sin. If the employer happens to be a man, she knows that by not shaking the other person's hand, there's a chance that she may not get the job or leave a bad impression. This is just an example of various negotiations that go on every single day. It is very messy, but scholars such as Schielke advocate the idea that it is ridiculous to see Muslims as uniform individuals without any contradictions, but that rather they are just like everyone else, incoherent subjects with lives as complex and messy as anyone else.
But there's one thing I still find quite puzzling.
What's that?
You said that the BBC and American liberals argue for who should speak for Islam, but don't Muslims do that all the time? So you'll have one sheikh who condemns something and another sheikh who says, well, no, it's actually alright. Both these positions are putting forth a claim for Islam and how Muslims should be like.
Right. But the difference here is, we acknowledge that there is a constant back and forth, dialogue, debate, and discussion going on within Islamic circles. It is ridiculous to think that this is not the case. To essentialize a position and project it upon 1.5 billion people from all over the world. In the case of the BBC or American media, there is a reduction of these positions to static categories of thought, the interpretations of which inevitably resist any form of change to the power dynamics on a geopolitical level.